Hare Krishna, welcome everyone. Good to see you all. Tonight we are continuing with our study of Bhagavad Gita as it is by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We're continuing with chapter 3 of the Gita. As we mentioned last week, chapter 3 is entitled Karma Yoga. We all know karma means action, activity. Yoga refers to connection with the divine. So karma yoga refers to connecting our activities to the divine. In other words, performing activities which will help to liberate us from the bondage of work, the cycle of repeated birth and death. So we need to learn how to do these kind of activities, how to connect our activities to Krishna, to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, so that our activities will help us to become free from karma bandhana, which will be one of the topics that we'll discuss tonight in this part of chapter 3 of the Gita. Karma bandhana means bondage from our work. So many people become bound by their work, by their karma, by their activities. But we need to learn how to become unbound by our activities. And Krishna terms this in this chapter as akarma. Akarma means how to do karma, how to do work, but not get a reaction for our work. That is called akarma. So we have karma and we have akarma. So karma bandhana means the activities that bind us to this world. So the Bhagavad Gita teaches us how to act, because we must act. Krishna has established this in the beginning of chapter 3. We must act in this world. However, we have to act in such a way that we do not become bound by our actions in this world. Okay, so I'll begin tonight with text number 9. If you have any questions or comments as we go, then please ask. Work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work causes bondage in this world. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction, and in that way you will always remain free from bondage. So, Guru Jamprabhu comments that verses 3 to 8 have hinted at nishkam karma, work with knowledge and detachment, because we explained this last week. Chapter 4 is entitled Jnana Yoga, transcendental knowledge. Chapter 3 is called Karma Yoga, right? How to act in this world. Now, we need to learn, not just ourselves, but the whole world needs to learn to act with jnana. You have to synergize karma and jnana. In other words, act karma with knowledge, transcendental knowledge, guidance from the Shastra, from the scriptures. And when we act with knowledge, what takes place? We become free. Nishkam karma allows a soul to be active, but in a detached way, so that he is protected from material entanglement. Higher still, as stated in text 9, is when one's knowledge increases to include knowledge of Vishnu, and the detached activities one then performs are offered to him with devotion. Nishkama karma is meant to lead us to bhakti. Right? So we're meant to perform activities dedicated to Krishna, because when we dedicate our activities to Krishna, what takes place? We become detached from this material world. This is stated in Bhagavad. Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janayat Yashu Vairagyam Gyanam Chayat Ahoitukam. That the natural consequence of performing devotional service to Krishna properly is that the devotee will automatically feel detachment and will be enlightened with transcendental knowledge. And I think all of us have this experience at some point or another. When we take to bhakti, when we take to devotional service, right? When we take to bhakti, when we take to devotion, what takes place? We get a feeling of detachment, right? We've all experienced this as devotees. You know, we take to devotional service, and especially in the beginning of our devotional practices. And what happens in the beginning? We become detached from this world. We just lose our taste for material activities, right? I think we've all experienced that. And hopefully that continues and increases over time, that we feel more and more detachment from this material world as time goes by. So this is the result, that when you get knowledge, transcendental knowledge, Krishna explains in the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita that Kesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mamupayanti te. Now, this term, buddhi yoga, Krishna used that 10 times in the previous chapter, right? Buddhi yoga, acting with intelligence, right? The yoga of intelligence, enlightenment. Now, in the 10th chapter, Krishna uses this terminology once again. Dadami buddhi yogam tam. I give, Krishna says in the 10th chapter, I give the sincere devotee the knowledge by which he can come to me in devotional service. Dadami buddhi yogam tam. I give it. Right? So when we perform devotional service sincerely, Krishna enlightens us from within our heart. Right? We become enlightened. We begin to understand. We get realizations and understanding about devotional activities. So this is called Buddhi Yoga. So Krishna is explaining here in this section that when we perform devotional service properly, we become detached from this world and enlightened with realizations of spiritual knowledge. Burajampa further says, the question arises, what if a person is overly attached to material life and cannot perform Nishkam Karma Yoga? To explain this, Krishna now describes the yoga ladder, beginning with the lowest rung and gradually moving higher. The next 7 verses, 10 to 16, which we will cover tonight, describe the progressive stages of the yoga ladder from Karma Kanda to Karma Yoga. So there's a yoga ladder. Krishna explains this here. It's also explained, chapter 12, there's a mention of a hierarchy of activity, right? Not everyone is on the same level of spiritual enlightenment, obviously. we're not all on the same level. Some of us are performing devotional service, but we have material attachments and desires. Some of us are performing devotional service, we have less material attachments and desires. And occasionally you'll meet someone who has no material attachments and desires. So everyone's on different levels. So Krishna is going to explain this. Gurujan Prabhu further says, every soul in the material world attempts, either subtly or grossly, to position himself, not Krishna, as the enjoyer and the controller. This is true regardless of the body the soul inhabits. The striving of ignorant animals for pleasure, according to their limited capacity, is the same as that of spiritually undeveloped humans, who, in their attempt to taste pleasure, act in ignorance. So, I think many of us can relate to this, that everyone in this material world has Purusha Bhav. Purusha Bhav means, Purusha means the controller, the enjoyer. So everyone has this, whether you're in a male form or a female form, we all have the same bhav. I am the controller. I am the center of enjoyment. I am the center of the universe. Fundamentally, that's what we think. Purusha Bhav means that we have that feeling that I am the enjoyer, I am the controller, and everyone in this material world has this state of consciousness. And the more we perform devotional service to Krishna, the more we reduce that consciousness. And we become Krishna conscious. We become detached from this world and we become more conscious and attached to Krishna. This verse, number 9, is quite important. Gurujan Prabhu has done a long commentary on it. To become situated under the protection of such a system, one must agree to regulate his enjoyment by the descending authority of Vedic formulas. One following that system does not simply act as he desires. His mood of subservience to God's order in the form of the Vedas, even though his purpose is to attain sense pleasures, is purifying, for he is following Krishna's system. By following this Vedic system of sacrifice, one also implicitly accepts the principle that he is not independent. Rather, his enjoyment depends upon the satisfaction of higher authorities. Sacrifice, recommended in the Vedic literature for satisfaction of the demigods, are a sort of inducement to the sacrificer to realize the existence of higher authorities. This is called karma kanda. So the Vedic system, it's an interesting point, actually. It's an interesting system. Prabhupada was asked, who is better situated? A Christian who is following churchianity or Christianity, or someone who is a demigod worshipper according to the Vedic system, right? So Prabhupada asked, Prabhupada was asked this question. Now, interesting, Prabhupada's answer was someone who worships the demigods in the Vedic system. So they're not, Christians at least are worshipping God. But Prabhupada said the highest the Christians can go is the heavenly planet, Swaga, within this material world. They can't actually transcend because they don't have full knowledge of Krishna, of God. Whereas someone who worships the demigods, according to the Vedic system, is in a more fortunate position. Now, we might naturally ask why. And the answer is that the demigod worshippers are following the Vedic system, and it will gradually elevate them, and they may have the opportunity at some point to meet a Vaishnava. And if they meet the Vaishnava can tell them, actually, the person that you worship in every jagya, Vishnu, you may be worshiping the demigods, but there's a portion of every jagya where Vishnu is worshipped. He is actually the supreme being. You are getting purified by worshiping him, and your goal should be to fully surrender unto him. So the basic principle, as Krishna is speaking of here and Prabhupada is elaborating, is that in order to advance in spiritual life, you have to accept authority. Right? We have to accept authority if we want to progress in spiritual life. And that's the Vedic system. Okay, you want a beautiful wife. You want riches. You want to become wealthy. You want good children. Worship this demigod, worship that demigod, you're worshiping someone higher than yourself in order to achieve your material desires. That in and of itself, that acceptance of authority is purifying. And then once we accept the authority, then we have the opportunity to worship Vishnu, and we have the opportunity to associate with Vaishnavas. And if that happens, our bhakti may progress, and then we can go beyond demigod worship and become theists, and worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that's the basic principle. Gurujan Prabhu further says, gradually, by following the Vedic system, one may accept an eternal, transcendental objective to replace his temporary, fruitive goals. With that acceptance, one abandons the designation of Karmakandi and becomes a karma yogi. By properly performing his appropriate duties, the karma yogi will gradually move from sakam karma yoga, attached work, to nishkam karma yoga, detached work. He can then follow the yoga ladder upwards towards liberation. His association and desires will dictate how far he actually climbs on this ladder. Bhagavad Gita will describe this ascension between chapters 3 and 6. So we begin, in previous lifetimes, those listening, we may have been demigod worshippers. And then somehow our Bhakti Lata Bij, the seed of devotion, it manifests. And then when that seed of devotion manifests, then we go to the next level. Right? And what's the next level? We begin to worship God, Krishna, but with material desires. That's called Sakama Karma Yoga. And then from that platform, we can then progress to Nishkam Karma Yoga, where we serve God, but our material desires, they gradually disappear, and we become selfless in our service. So that's the yoga ladder, and that leads us to pure bhakti, to pure devotion, where ahoitaki apratihata, we worship Krishna without motivation and without interruption, which is what we're aiming for. Gurujan Prabhu further says, there's a very long commentary he gives here. It shows this is a very important verse that we're reading tonight. Additionally, when one proceeds in a step-by-step fashion, his advancement is limited by his own capabilities. But when one who sets Krishna's service as his goal attains the mercy of Krishna and the Vaishnavas, they act as his supports throughout the spiritual journey. The devotee faces these two difficulties. He may never understand that the highest rung of the yoga ladder is to attain Krishna's service. And he is limited by his own detachment. Purity and power to advance. He does not gain the assistance of Krishna's descending mercy. So basically, that's the principle. The principle is we need to become subservient. That's why the whole path of bhakti, my wife and I actually speak about this quite often. Bhakti is based upon subservience to and acceptance of authority. And we see so many people, especially in this modern day and age, they struggle with authority. They find it difficult to accept authority. But the whole process of bhakti is based on this principle. Rupa Goswami says, Ado Guru Pada Shraya. Bhakti begins by accepting shelter at the lotus feet of a guru. That's where devotion begins. So if you want to advance in Krishna consciousness, you have to accept authority. Right? And that's how you will progress. Then finally, Gurujan Prabhu says, thus by studying Bhagavad Gita as it is, no one can become bewildered and mistake a rung of the yoga ladder as the goal. Srila Prabhupada mercifully and expertly synthesizing the commentaries of the previous acharyas with his own realized words, created fully relevant purports for a worldwide audience of Bhagavad Gita readers. Srila Prabhupada revealed Krishna's actual desire for the conditioned soul, Savadamam Parijaja, that he abandoned all forms of religion and surrender unto Krishna. Why should we remain incomplete, fixed at the level of the elaborate Vedic system, when we can achieve the system's full purpose by the easy step of surrender to Krishna? By writing Bhagavad Gita as it is, Srila Prabhupada clearly proved that the Lord's devotee is even more merciful than the Lord. So, the final instruction Krishna gives in Gita, abandon everything and just surrender unto me. Right? So that's the final instruction that Krishna gives in the Bhagavad Gita. Abandon everything and surrender unto me. That's Krishna's final instruction. Right? Now, Prabhupada, as Gurujan Prabhu points out, that Prabhupada keeps us on track from the very beginning of the Gita. Although that's the final instruction, that permeates the entire Bhagavad Gita, so we don't become bewildered. And we don't think that, something less is the actual goal of Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada says in this purport, in this verse, one has to work in Krishna consciousness to satisfy Krishna. This practice will not only save one from the reaction of work, but also gradually elevate one to transcendental loving service of the Lord, which alone can raise one to the kingdom of God. So that's the essence. Prabhupada says in the purport, this is the essence, right? Just fully surrender unto Krishna. Okay. So text number 10. In the beginning of creation, the Lord of all creatures sent forth generations of men and demigods, along with sacrifices for Vishnu, and blessed them by saying, be thou happy by this yajna, sacrifice, because its performance will bestow upon you everything desirable for living happily and achieving liberation. So this is Krishna's instruction. Prabhupada says in the purport of verse 10. The Lord created this material world to enable the conditioned souls to learn how to perform yajnas for the satisfaction of Vishnu, so that while in the material world, they can live very comfortably without anxiety, and after finishing the present material body, they can enter the kingdom of God. That is the whole program for the conditioned soul. Once again, Prabhupada emphasizes the essence of the Bhagavad Gita in his purport. Now, Krishna says here, we can live happily in this world. Actually, Prabhupada's guru, Bhakti Saraswati Thakur, he says, there is nothing lacking in the material world except Krishna consciousness. If we become Krishna conscious, there's nothing lacking in this world. Right? There's nothing lacking in this world except Krishna consciousness. And if we are Krishna conscious, if we're devotees, Prabhupada said, Krishna consciousness is simple for the simple, complicated for the complicated. If we just follow the simple process of Krishna consciousness, right, we can live simply and happily and peacefully in this world, but we tend to overcomplicate things. It's a disease of the conditioned soul. I remember Guru said in one class that, and it struck me. It's always stayed with me that the conditioned soul in this material world, they are attached to suffering. It's the material world, the perverted taste we develop for the material energy means that we actually become attached to suffering in this world. We want to suffer. We want drama. We want politics. We want criticism. We want uncertainty. We want conflict. People actually become attached to these things. A devotee is simple. And when you become purified, you become detached from these things. So this is the nature of this world. Krishna says if you just follow the Vedic system, you can live happily, but you can gradually make spiritual advancement as well, which is what we should do. But people don't follow the simple system. Now, Gurujan Prabhu also made another comment one time. I remember him saying that, quite often as a senior devotee, he gets asked to speak at weddings. Devotee wedding. People get married. Devotees get married. Quite often you're asked to speak at the wedding. Now, I remember one time he said, he was talking about what he says when he has to speak at the weddings. And he made the comment that I tell them they should be happy in a world where there is no happiness. That's the dichotomy of the material world. We should be happy in a world where there's actually no happiness, right? There is always suffering in this world, but we have to be happy in the suffering, right? Not so easy to be happy even in the suffering, right? But we have to learn as devotees that even in the suffering, we can be happy. We can focus on Krishna. So Krishna is saying here, this is the karma kanda system. Live happily and gradually get liberation. Even better than that is live happily and fully surrender to Krishna. Right? And then you have everything that you could possibly want. Because suffering will come. In this material world, it's inevitable. Text 11. The demigods, being pleased by sacrifices, will also please you. And thus, by cooperation between men and demigods, prosperity will reign for all. Prabhupada says in the purport, performance of yagyas has many side benefits, ultimately leading to liberation from material bondage. By performance of yagyas, all activities become purified. It's a very nice instruction, which is given. Right? In this material world, you can get many benefits. By being a devotee, you will get many, even material things, you will be blessed with. It says one who studies the Srimad Bhagavatam carefully and sincerely, they will get material benefits, dharma, artha, karma, right? It says these are like maidservants at the house of Bhakti. You will get material satisfaction when you serve Krishna nicely. And you'll even get moksha, which is liberation, when you serve Krishna nicely. But the devotee, his ultimate aim, he doesn't become distracted. An advanced devotee doesn't become distracted by the benefits one may receive by practicing bhakti. Right? He becomes focused on his service to Krishna. Right? And then the other things, they may come or may go. That's not his goal or what he's focused upon. Text number 12. In charge of the various necessities of life, the demigods, being satisfied by performance of yajna, sacrifice, will supply all necessities to you. But he who enjoys such gifts without offering them to the demigods in return is certainly a thief. It's a very strong statement by Krishna, and Prabhupada elaborates that Krishna uses the word stena. Stena means a thief. Krishna says you're a thief. If you try to enjoy the gifts of this material world without offering them to Krishna, you're a thief, and thieves get reactions. So a thief will get reactions for his activities if he's a thief. Now, if you steal something, you'll get punished. So in this material world, everyone is considered a thief because they take, for example, the bhoga, the foodstuffs, which are meant to be enjoyed by Krishna. They don't offer them to Krishna. They just take it. They become thieves, and you get reactions. Even if you're vegetarian, if you don't offer the food to Krishna, you get reactions. So as devotees, we have to be very careful that we offer everything to Krishna. That way we don't get reactions in this material world. Gurujan Prabhu says, a thief is punished by the state. The thieves who live within this world without repaying the demigods for the amenities they have used are punished by Yamaraj. Followers of the Vedic system, even though they have material desires, are not punished. Rather, they are elevated by their submission to the Vedic system. The Vedic system limits sense enjoyment to that which is attained through Vedic formulas. Despite a follower's selfish desires, his adherence to Vedic injunctions is a step towards giving up his envy of Krishna and his sense of being independent of him. Arjuna, however, could think, I don't need yagyas, demigods, and opulent necessities of life, nor must I perform yagyas to live. I will go to the forest and live by begging. I won't take from the demigods, so I won't be sinful for not offering yagyas to them. Not only won't I be a thief, but I won't take part in this sinful warfare. And Krishna is going to reply to this in the next verses. Prabhupada says in the purport for this verse, all the necessities of life are supplied by the Lord's agents with the purpose that we should make proper use of them to keep ourselves fit and healthy for the purpose of self-realization, leading to the ultimate goal of life, namely liberation from the material struggle for existence. This aim of life is attained by the performance of yagyas. So these are nice points. That this is why everyone must perform yagya. Right? This word is there throughout the Vedas, yagya. Yagya means, we translate it as sacrifice. You make a sacrifice. I could eat the food, I could cook the food and eat it myself. But then I'm staying it, then I'm a thief, then I'll get reactions. So better to cook the food, offer it to Krishna as a sacrifice. You're sacrificing your pleasure for his pleasure. You make him the primary enjoyer. You become the secondary enjoyer. And by doing this, making this sacrifice, you become purified, you become satisfied, right? And ultimately you become Krishna conscious. So Prabhupada's pointing this out, that we have to perform sacrifice. And what is the recommended sacrifice in this day and age? It is Sankirtan Yajna, right? Congregational chanting of the holy names of Krishna. Congregational chanting of the holy names of Krishna. We need to congregationally hear and chant Krishna's holy names. This is called Sankirtan Yajna, right? Congregational chanting of the holy names of Krishna. Now, this is the greatest sacrifice. It sacrifices our time, our energy, our life. It's the way of expressing our bhakti, our devotion to Krishna, through Sankirtan, through congregational chanting of the holy names of Krishna. So this is the Yuga Dharma. And one who performs this yajna, right, as taught by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and follows the process that was taught by him, one will become purified in one's consciousness and attain the ultimate goal of life, which is to become fully Krishna conscious. Text number 13. The devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sins because they eat food which is offered first for sacrifice. Others who prepare food for personal sense enjoyment verily eat only sin. Papa. Sanskrit. In Sanskrit, we call sin pap. In the purport, Prabhupada explains, the devotees, being always in a compact of love with Krishna, cannot accept anything without first offering it to Krishna. Therefore, such devotees always perform yagyas in different modes of devotional service, such as Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, etc. And these performances of yajna keep them always aloof from all kinds of material contamination of sinful association in the material world. We become free from material desires even by performing jagya, Sankirtan jagya. You have to chant the holy names of Krishna. You have to dive into Sankirtan jagya, spreading the Hare Krishna movement, giving everyone in the universe. Prabhupada once said to Bhurajan Prabhu and Mother Jagatarini, he said, my desire is to liberate everyone in the universe. Please help me fulfill my desire. So we have enough service to do for lifetimes, right? That we can dedicate ourselves to pleasing Krishna, to serving Krishna. That will liberate us from this material atmosphere in this material world. So we should think like that. We should meditate like that, right? That we will become detached from this material world. We should perform the jagya of Sankirtan, of congregational chanting of the holy names of Krishna, and spread that Sankirtan jagya, right? Become involved in book distribution, Harinam Sankirtan, and Prasadam distribution, and cultivating people in Krishna consciousness. That should be our focus. So text number 14. All living bodies subsist on food grains which are produced from rains. Rains are produced by performance of jagya, sacrifice, and jagya is born of prescribed duties. So, Prabhupada says in the purport, the devotees offer food to Krishna and then eat, a process which nourishes the body spiritually. By such action, not only are past sinful reactions in the body vanquished, but the body becomes immunized to all contamination of material nature, which are impediments to the progress of self-realization. It's a very powerful, Prabhupada's words are so powerful. I was doing Govardhan Parakram, walking around Govardhan Hill. Many years ago, I was 15 years ago or 20, I can't remember, 15 years ago or 20 years ago or something. And we start at Radhakund. Quite often we start there near Radhakund, and then we walk down, and then you get to Punchari. Punchari is the far end of Govardhan, the opposite end of Radhakund, the halfway mark, and then we turn and we head back up the other side of Giriraj, head north. So next to Apsarakund, there's some Bhajan Kutias, and there's some Babas living there, some devotees living, very sincere devotees of Krishna, who are living there in the holy dham and engaged in sadhana at a very most holy place. So I was there a number of years ago, and I was going around, and I met one Babaji. There are different types of Babajis, even in Vrindavan. There are some who are not actually sincere, and there are some who are very sincere, very pure and devoted. So I was fortunate to meet one of those pure, devoted, sincere devotees. And we were talking, and he said to me, he was very educated actually, spoke English very well, very educated person, but he'd become a Babaji, renounced everything and moved to Govardhan Hill, to Vrindavan. And he said to me, there's so many, I read so many books, spiritual books, but he said, there is something special about the purports and the books coming from Srila Prabhupada, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And he said to me, he said, can you please get me, next time you come, bring me, I think he asked for Nectar of Devotion or Krishna book, it was one of them. He said, please get me a copy, I want my own copy. He said, no one writes like him. Yeah, no one writes like him. So I did that. I got the book and brought it next time I came. And you can see when you read like the purport like this, no one writes like Prabhupada. Prabhupada's words are so powerful, have so much effect. So he basically tells us that if you offer your food to Krishna, if you don't offer your food, you're eating pap. Pap means sin. You get karma. When you eat food, especially grains cooked by non-devotees, Prabhupada said it makes your mind wicked. So this is why it's important when we're practicing Krishna consciousness to only eat the food which is offered, the prasadam, the bhoga which is offered to Krishna, cooked by devotees. Because then when you take the prasad, you become purified. And Prabhupada explains the process here. He says that when you take the food offered to Krishna, it nourishes the body spiritually. Prabhupada explains this. It actually, when you take prasadam, food offered to Krishna, it actually purifies the brain cells. And then Prabhupada says, then you could understand the Krishna conscious philosophy. And you see, when devotees don't take prasadam, it's harder for them to understand philosophy. And you see the non-devotees, because they don't take prasadam, it's very hard. And I notice even myself, because sometimes we eat food which is cooked by non-devotees, sometimes. I notice sometimes it has an effect on my consciousness. Material desires or material thoughts come up. There's a correlation there. So we have to be very careful. Prabhupada says when you take prasadam, food offered to Krishna, your past sinful reactions in the body are vanquished and you're immunized by the contamination of material nature. That's a very powerful statement. Right? Very powerful statement that when you take food offered to Krishna, right, your sinful reactions, in other words, your karma from many lifetimes, it becomes diminished by taking prasadam offered to Krishna. And your body becomes immunized from all the contamination of material nature. Your body becomes immunized, purified. That's the power of taking prasadam. So Prabhupada writes very beautifully and explains the simple process of Krishna consciousness very eloquently. Text number 15. Am I up to, can someone tell me? Did we read, I read 13, right? Yeah, I did. And I read 14. Okay. Can someone help me? Because did I read 14, verse 14?
Yes, Prabhu, you did.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So text number 15. Regulated activities are prescribed in the Vedas, and the Vedas are directly manifested from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Consequently, the all-pervading transcendence is eternally situated in acts of sacrifice. So Prabhupada says in the purport, if we have to work for the satisfaction of the Jagya Purush, then we must find out the direction of work in Brahman or the transcendental Vedas. The Vedas are therefore codes of working directions. So Prabhupada once again explains this beautifully. These regulated activities in the Vedas are the codes of how we should work in this world. So we don't have to speculate, right? And this knowledge is lost, right? It's been lost in the modern civilization. People don't know that the goal of life is to work for the pleasure of God, for Krishna. So as devotees, that's why Prabhupada emphasizes distributing books, because we have to re-establish this knowledge within society, that we're meant to work for the pleasure, the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Right? That is what the Vedas teach us. That's what the Bhagavad Gita teaches us. So when people do this, they'll become happy, satisfied, and peaceful within this material world. Okay. So the final verse for tonight, text number 16. My dear Arjuna, one who does not follow in human life the cycle of sacrifice thus established by the Vedas certainly leads a life full of sin. Living only for the satisfaction of the senses, such a person lives in vain. So this is Krishna's concluding statement for this section. If you don't perform sacrifice, if you don't offer the fruits of your action to Krishna, you will incur sin. You will get karmic reactions. In the purport, Prabhupada says, human life is specifically meant for self-realization in either of three ways: karma yoga, jnana yoga, or bhakti yoga. There is no necessity of rigidly following the performances of prescribed yagyas for transcendentalists who are above vice and virtue, and those engaged in sense gratification, but those engaged in sense gratification require purification by the above-mentioned cycle of jagya performances. So Prabhupada is pointing out in the purport that if you're an advanced devotee, you don't have to do all the Vedic rituals. You just surrender to Krishna, you just serve Krishna, you'll become purified. For those who are not yet advanced, they have to follow all the rules and regulations very carefully of sadhana in order to become purified. So we'll stop there. Does anyone have any questions? Any comments on what we discussed? Thank you all for coming. And we'll see you next week. We'll continue with our study of the Bhagavad Gita. Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Jai.
Jai. Thank you,
See you
Prabhu.
next week.
See
Hare
you soon.
Krishna.